Hi, I'm Paul Germain. Welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, we cover a variety of topics, from man overboard to hurricane protection, and the general idea is to give you more information so you can make better and smarter decisions and have more fun on the water. But every now and then we take a little side trip down into an area that I think you might find interesting, and that's the case today. You know, what we're going to do is dive into the area of model boats, and it's quite an expansive hobby with a great variety of boats in it. And joining us to kind of guide us through that world is Fred Clausen, who's a collector of these boats and a real expert in the area. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Paul. I'm glad to be here.
Fred, cool show today. A lot of interesting boats we're going to look at. But before we get into it, can you share a little bit about your boating background and a little bit about how you get involved in the model boat hobby?
Well, as a kid, we had boats back to when I was 10 years old, and we did a lot of water skiing in the Adirondacks and up on Lake Winnipesaukee. And one thing led to another, and I ended up, after an insurance career, coming up here and running cottages in Weirs Beach, and decided to have model boats as our theme of the cottages. And I used to have them in the shelves, and then the kids started playing with them, and I said, that's not good, so I pulled them off the shelves, and they ended up starting a collection of my own.
Oh, really? How long ago was that?
That was 19 years ago.
Yeah, wow. And you've built up a fairly extensive collection, I would
Yes,
guess.
yes. Too much in a way, but it's a lot of fun.
That's right. Well, we've got a sampling set aside for our show here today, so why don't we get right into that?
Be happy to do that, Paul.
Well, Fred, you know, one of the things I find so interesting about the model boat hobby is that there's so many varieties of boats. There's runabouts and cruisers, and there's inboards and outboards. And we've got a collection of outboards. We're going to show them today,
we're going to do
right?
outboards,
Can
yes.
you tell us a little bit about that one in front of you?
Well, this in particular is made by a company called ITO. It was a kit. It came in a box that looks like this.
Okay.
And this is the parts before it was built by my friend Jim. And when he built it, he had to bend all the wood to have the curvature of the hull.
Oh.
And he was very honest with me, and he said he will never build another one of these. It was so much work. But this was a special one because of the company that made the kit. I don't know how they expected little kids or even teenagers to build it.
Yeah.
It has an ornamental engine on the back. It does not work.
Evinrude.
Evinrude.
Yep.
It's plastic. There are no batteries. There are no wires to it.
Okay.
But it just fits the feel of the picture of the box and what's due on the boat.
It's got the flag, and it's got the cleats, and it's
Yep.
got some step pads, and what do you get up there on the bow? You get a...
Got an ornament on the bow, and then you do have a green light on the front.
Yeah.
And Jim also made the stand that it sits on. That was not part of the kit.
Right, so he's a talented guy to be able to build these. These kits were complete, but they needed some craftsmanship associated with it, right?
Yes, and he picked the colors. He stained the wood instead of painting it on the deck, and he picked the white and the green for the colors, which are traditional colors.
Wow, that's a nice boat.
Thank you.
Let's slide this one in here.
This next one is what's called a Langcraft.
A Langcraft.
And that's made by a company in Japan called Langcraft. And this one is in particular is an outboard engine on the back, also
Yes.
made by Langcraft.
Oh, okay. That was
And-
unusual, I guess.
Yes, one of the few companies that made engines and boats. And if this motor stays the right way, you can see the lever arm. That's the on and off switch for the outboard motor.
I see. Yes, I
And
see that over there.
You can see that in here, the wires go into a plastic ornamental gas
looks
tank
like a
that
gas
hooks to
tank,
the
right.
batteries. And this is special because it has the fins on it.
Got the fins, yeah.
It
It's got a
makes it-
mahogany transom back
Yeah,
here.
mahogany
Which is
transom.
kind of a nice touch.
As you can see, it's been played with. It's
Yeah.
not in pristine condition, but it's an unusual color mix. The design on the deck. It does have a light that works. The bow light works.
The seating's kind of different. You don't see much of this bench seating.
The bench
typically,
seating,
do you?
yeah, on the sides. No, it's just it's an unusual boat.
Yeah.
And I probably had this one 8 or 10 years, somewhere around that.
Oh, is that
But
right?
this engine can be worked on because it's metal, and you can unscrew. There's a screw down the bottom,
Yes.
and you can take the top off. So if it does need repair, it's somewhat easy to get at and work on it.
Okay, all right, so they thought ahead.
Yes, they did.
Yep. Let's take a look at another one here. This is called the Sea Sprite.
Sea Sprite.
Yeah. Is that unusual for boats to have names on them like that?
Yes. What they do is try to make a boat that looks like another boat, similar like a Chris Craft, but they don't have the name Chris Craft on them because they have to pay a high royalty to do that.
Yes.
So this one just was called the Sea Sprite, and it's short boat in real life. It's probably about 14, 15 feet.
Okay.
Kind of like a glass bar G3 and the fiberglass boats back from the 50s.
Okay.
It does have a Brand X engine on it. It's unusual with the color. Looks a little bit like an Evinrude.
It does, yes.
But it does not have a company name as far as a manufacturer, nor do we know the manufacturer on the boat.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
it's in great condition. If it was played with, it was played with very little.
Got an interesting shape to it. It's kind of like a wedge, kind of
Yes.
like a triangle, and a relatively flat bottom.
Yeah, it's a real speedster boat.
Yeah, it looks like it's made out of like a balsa wood type of
It's
material.
heavier than a balsa wood.
Heavier than a balsa
yes,
wood.
yeah, heavier. It's probably a mahogany. But again, the natural color on the deck.
Yes, I like that. I like that very much. And then we've got a fourth boat here. And this one's got some pretty pronounced fins on it.
Yes. Another special boat. This is the only outboard that I've ever seen that's made by the ITO company.
Oh.
They made the boat and they made the engine, which again is very unusual. Has the fins,
Yeah.
a nice color combination, all original paint. This is the way that I got it. It has not been touched up at all.
When did you get it?
This one goes back probably about 18 years ago. I drove down to New York City and picked it up from a fella in New York City.
Oh,
So
you
it's a
did?
very, very special boat.
Okay. All right.
Again, as far as I know, the only outboard that the ITO company made.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
All right. And this would run off like a single D cell or a couple
This
Cs?
is two C cells
C
that are
cells.
under the cover and has a plunger push and pull switch, small windshield.
And how would you make it go in the right direction? Is the outboard relatively stiff and you just point it in the right
Yes,
direction?
this does not have a rudder. You can turn it if you want it to go.
Yes, to take the angle.
Get the angle.
Yeah.
Usually, unless you're in a small pond, little boats go to the other side. It usually will come back to you
Oh, it
somewhere
does.
along the way.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just talk for a moment at an overview perspective about values. You know, I'm more used to larger boats,
Yeah.
and well, let's say I want to buy a 16-foot whale, or I can go get a blue book value on it. I can go get an NADA book value on it. So I can home in fairly quickly on the value of a regular sized boat. How does that work in the world of model boats? Do they have similar guides or is it different?
No, no guides at all. It's a very disorganized hobby, but if you really want something, you're going to pay. I have this particular boat we just talked about. I have never seen another one like it for sale.
Okay.
If I was buying it today, I would have paid a lot of money because
that
it
right?
has the fins and because it's an ITO boat. There is no established guide for people to come up with. It depends on the condition and just depends on what model boat it is. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of model boats.
Yeah. And the prices just go all over the map, and it depends upon who the collector is and what they're interested in at that moment.
Yes. Yeah. So you may pay an unrealistic price, and if you get on eBay, maybe the first one to see it on a buy it now, you can pick it up for a real cheap money when someone doesn't know what they're selling, and
Wow.
that does happen.
Fred, you know, one of the things I think is so interesting about this hobby of model boats is just the variety of boats. I'm looking at this boat that you have in front of you here now, and it looks kind of like something out of the Jetsons, really. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, to me, it reminds me of the old glass bar G3 from the 50s, which is one of my favorite boats. The G3 had sponsons on the side for
Okay,
balance. This
all
has
right.
the wood. It's unusual. It's a race boat. It's got the Buick ornament on the front
Yeah.
that we've talked about.
Yes.
And it's got a small windshield. The engine is made by a company in Japan called Sakai, S-A-K-A-I.
Oh, yeah.
And it's unusual because the actual wires from the battery screw to the knobs on the front.
I see.
Most of them have the wires going into the casing of the motor.
Oh, yeah.
But this particular one just screws to the knobs.
Yeah.
The lever on the top is the on and off switch. It does have the ornamental turn handle that
yeah.
the smaller engines have.
Yeah.
But this is more of the hydroplane family, and the boats we're going to be looking at now are similar in the fact that they're small hydroplane type of boats.
Oh, yeah.
Which again is one of my favorite type of boats.
It is. About what time, what year do you think that was built? Is there a certain range that you
I'm guessing the 50s because they tried to make things that were current in the year
Yes.
that they
Yes.
sell them as a toy boat that
Yeah.
would help sell, but I honestly don't have a clue when it would be made.
I see. Well, let's look at another interesting one we have here. So this looks like a race boat because it's got numbers on it.
That's the HI race boat. That was made by Langcraft, and that's a Langcraft engine on the back. They call that
okay.
one the Starlet.
Yeah.
And it's a hydroplane feel. It also has the gas tank where you would plug the wires in. This
see.
particular engine is the wires are missing,
Yeah.
and they would get plugged into the little holes on there,
Into
and the
the battery.
batteries would go under the seat.
Oh, they would?
Yep.
Okay,
And
all right.
it has the fins on it, which again
Does have
I'm
the
partial to, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have any working headlights, being a race boat.
No headlights or horn or anything like that. They got a couple cleats on the end here.
Yep.
How did you come into this boat?
That one, I bought it on eBay. I'm going to say probably 15 years ago. I have not touched it. It's been played with, but very gently because there's not a lot of marks on it, and it has not been touched up in the paint.
What attracted you to it?
The fins.
The fins.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
all
the
right.
hydroplane feel, because that just makes me feel like when I was a kid. And very hard to see in here, but it does have an ornamental dashboard that
Yes.
adds to the realism of it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a neat boat. Let's take a look at our next boat here. Now this is again a hydroplane design, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But it,
Wood, all wood.
All
right,
wood.
all
yep.
wood.
Unusual because the Buick ornament on the front does have a green light, so it's wired up to the battery,
does.
and it will produce light.
Okay.
The push-pull switch for the on and off. It does have a streamline engine.
Yes. I got two-cylinder.
Two-cylinder, and it runs on 2 C-cell batteries. The I do believe the green has been repainted. If you look carefully at the line down there,
Yes.
It's not a steady line. So I think that part has been repainted. But I have not seen another one like this. I've had this one probably at least 15 years. I was gravitating towards the smaller boats at first because that's what interested me.
About 15 years. And again, was this another? Where did you pick up this boat?
This would have been probably from eBay, again, back in the
long
early
ago.
years.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
pretty early eBay. Yeah.
And it's stamped on the inside, made in Japan.
Yeah. Now, again, would that be something that supports the authenticity, and would that have an impact on the value of the boat?
I think it would, but I can't tell you what it is a authentic boat of, other than
Right.
a hydroplane, or
Okay.
it may be a homemade hydroplane.
Okay. All right. And then we've got a final boat here, all black, basically, with some red racing stripes and a red bottom to it.
Right.
Yeah.
This one I bought recently. It's made locally in the U.S. That's locally to me, by a company called RC Craft.
RC Craft.
He has many shows on YouTube where he talks about all the boats he's made. He's made probably 50 different designs.
Oh.
This is unique because he takes parts that you don't really see on the top of a boat. This is usually for the drive shaft to go through, but he puts it as an ornament
right.
on the front.
Yeah.
His painting is spectacular.
Yes.
It comes without an engine.
Oh,
I
it does.
put this engine on because of the coloring of the red, and it fit the size of the boat.
Yes.
This opens up, and you can see he has a very special gas tank on the inside
does, yes.
with the knobs in the front where you hook the battery wires up to. And he has his logo, and he numbers all his boats. They're stamped on the inside, so they're traceable back to him. He has a variety of unique boats. Many parallel the old ITO boats, and this one is called the Sea Sled.
Okay. All right. So he makes in replicas in many cases.
Yes, replicas. Yep, and the quality is fantastic. He doesn't actually make them until he receives an order because of the amount of time and money it takes to make the boat. They tend to be on the expensive side, but the quality is definitely there.
Quality's there.
Yep.
Let's talk for a minute, again, stepping back for just a moment. When these boats, most of these boats were made that we've been looking at, 40s, 50s, that sort of thing, would people at that point have a choice of a kit boat or an assembled boat?
They did have some kits in the beginning in the 50s. K&O was the Speedster one. It was in an inboard. That was one of the most famous kits. But as you got more into the 70s, you came out with the plastic kits, monogram plastics, and more kits. I just prefer the factory-made boats rather than the kit boats because I could never build a kit. I did not have that ability, so I like someone else to do it for me.
I don't blame you. Well, Fred, I've spent a lot of time around the waterfront in different shows, classic and rare boat shows, and one of the things that sometimes distinguishes the boats is the shape of the hull. And the model that you have in front of you is got a very different shape to it, right?
Yes, definitely. It's very unusual, and it definitely is very old. And to me, there's no other boat that looks like this in the market today.
No.
Either the collectible market or the new boat market. Very unusual because the outboard engine goes through the center of the boat.
Yes, I
And
see that right there.
You can see on the front there, the hull design, it's shallow in the back and deep,
Yes.
deep in the front.
Yes.
This is made by a company called Liberty Playthings, and it was more as a toy, definitely not as a collectible, but it is one of the nicest collectibles out there. If you want to change the batteries, you have to take all these little screw eyes and line them up with the slot, and
I
then the
see,
cover
right.
lifts off and the batteries are in underneath.
Oh, that's interesting.
It does have a little compass right here in the front, so if you want to be particular about where your boat travels,
What direction?
you can
Sure.
just look right there.
And it's going to get a small cockpit there. That's kind of interesting. Just for
real-
one-seater or
Just a
two-seater.
one-seater. It's a joyride boat.
Yeah.
And again, the bubble windshield proves that it goes back into the early 50s, possibly late 40s, but I'm not sure. It's hard to date a lot of these boats.
Yeah.
These particular Buick ornaments have red and green lights. We saw one before that had a green light in it. It has the plunger on and off switch,
Yeah.
and the battery wires come out and they hook to the knobs on the front.
Terminals there, yep.
And that's the switch to turn the motor on and off. And this also was made by the same company as one previously called Sakai, and it has its label on the back.
I see. So a different boat manufacturer and engine manufacturer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And Liberty Playthings has a few boats, and all of them are unusual. They're not in the standard toy boat market.
Wow, that's just a cool boat. Well, here's the second boat here.
Another interesting boat.
Yeah.
This is an Aristocraft.
Aristocraft. I'm familiar with that name.
Well, Aristocrafts are sold today, and this model was recently made, I'm going to say 10 years ago.
Okay.
And they have a real boat the company Aristocraft has made that looks just like this.
Yes.
So they would
Yes.
put these boats out. If you ever bought a real one from the company, you've
Right.
got to have a model one.
The little model one, right?
Runs on two AA batteries,
Blaze, yeah.
which is unusual. Most of the time they're C's or D's.
And look at the steering wheel here in the middle.
Right in the
Rather
middle.
than the front near the windshield.
Yep.
Yeah.
The parts that you see are not standard toy boat parts. So this is all custom made. The mahogany deck, the mahogany sides, the unusual red and green lights in the front.
Yeah.
They made their own parts.
Oh, they did.
This is the stern light. It does light up when the batteries are in.
Okay. He's running a Mercury on this
This
one.
particular has a Mercury on it. Yes, it can have many different motors on it. And this is a very unique stand that came with the boat. It's a lucite stand, and the boat fits on there, perfectly.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
And there is a certificate that shows if you're the owner of this particular model boat.
All right. All right.
So that adds to the value of the boat.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Nice. As like you say, on that one, it came on a stand, and the boat we have here, moving into the picture, this one actually came on a trailer.
Well, it now is on a trailer.
not on
it
a
didn't
trailer.
come on a trailer.
Oh, it did. Okay.
This is one made by Fleetline. It's called the Vagabond.
Yeah.
And this has been restored by my friend John down in Arkansas.
What did he do?
He cleaned all the pieces and he put the better white lines in, new
Okay.
windshield.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that added the Mercury, the Evinrude
It's a big
on the
V4
back.
Evinrude out
54, 450 Evinrude.
Yeah.
But it's one of the big old time engines.
Oh yeah, I remember this one. Yep.
The boat is spectacularly clean. The lines are clean. It may have been played with. If it was very gently played with. But the especially nice part of this is the trailer that was made.
I see.
This is a custom-made trailer by somebody different that worked on the boat, and he's had 3 or 4 of them on eBay. Tends to be somewhat expensive,
Yeah.
but I had to have one just because of the uniqueness.
All right.
I've seen maybe 3 on there in total.
So you got a custom tandem trailer on this.
Yep, and everything
nice.
just very, very special on it.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool boat. I like that boat. And we have one last one here, and this one has the box with it again. And I think you've mentioned before the boxes can really add some value to the total package, right?
Yes. What we've tried to do in this segment is go from the all wood boats to the wood on the plastic boat, which is the previous one, and now to all plastic boats.
Plastic, okay.
And again, continuing the theme of the outboard motors.
Yes.
This particular one was made over in France, and it's a Meccano Just
Meccano.
drew a blank on the name.
Oh, yeah.
Made by Meccano, but it's made in France.
Yeah.
And I bought this on the internet from the guy in France. I do a
From
fair
France, yeah.
I do a fair amount of dealing overseas with Belgium, France, and England. And this is just a basic runabout, but again, all plastic. The engine is plastic. The lever is the on and off switch in the front that turns it. And it's called the Commander, but the fact that it has the box with it and it shows it's a water skiing boat.
Oh yeah, right. Right. Yeah, that's a slick looking boat. You know, Fred, just to step back a minute, you have such a broad collection. You have inboards and outboards. When people collect boats, they typically focus on one. Do they focus on a timeline from 1950 to 1960? Or do they focus on inboards versus outboards, or cruisers versus runabouts? Have you seen any trends in that among the other people that do collecting?
Yes, there's some people that, first of all, only collect outboard motors. They don't collect boats at all.
Oh, okay.
And they specialize in working on them. That, again, is not my scope of collecting.
Right.
What I concentrate on is any boat that you may have seen on Lake Winnipesaukee starting in the early 50s until maybe the 90s.
Okay.
That's the theme of my collecting. Inboard or outboard, I want them both.
Yeah.
Cruiser or cabin cruiser, I want them both.
Okay.
Anything that looks like a boat that you would have seen on Lake Winnipesaukee is what goes into my collection.
All right. So
we all have themes.
they all have themes, and that's your theme.
Yes.
Right. Well, Fred, do you know one of the interesting aspects of the hobby, I think, is that the models continued, but the construction materials and techniques changed, right? We've been looking at wood boats, and we looked at a plastic boat, but that's a tin boat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is one of the few tin boats out there, and it's made by a company called Sakai, which we talked about before. They also made the engine. A few of the boats have had this Sakai engine on it,
Yeah.
and with the knobs in the front where you hook the wires to. But these people have made the whole boat, and the only boats that they made have been tin boats.
Interesting.
It's a very well played with boat. It's still in pretty good condition. It is dirty, and it could be restored. But the fact that these boats have a story behind them, I probably don't know the story, but I like the fact that they have been played with by kids, because that was the purpose.
Right.
And this is unusual because the batteries go in underneath,
Oh, yeah.
and there's two D-cell batteries there. And as you can hear,
Yeah.
it's tin.
Now that's very durable, right? And maybe in contrast to the wooden boats, this would probably be one that the kids would play more roughly with and it would survive, right?
Yeah, the paint gets chipped more
Yeah.
on the metal ones, tin ones, but it does survive. There's no real dents in it. It looks great structurally. It just has some missing paint. It's got a boating flag on it,
Yeah.
and it's just a good example of another manufactured type of substance.
Very authentic, genuine
Yes,
model.
yeah, good
Yep.
runabout. Yep.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at our next boat here. Now, you've got the box and you've got the boat. And again, that's an important component to have the box, if at all possible, right?
Yes, but what's interesting on this, I just got this about a week ago from a fella in Japan, and the guy who I got it from is an 80-year-old gentleman who speaks extremely good English, and it turns out that he worked for one of the toy boat manufacturers, and he has a lot of boat parts and small boats around. I have this Structo 1 boat, but it does not have the engine on the back.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of a unique engine, and he called it a dummy engine. It does have a motor in it, but there are no wires that come out. It's in pieces, but it looks good.
It does look good, yeah. Well, like an old Mercury,
Yes.
actually.
But this is a mixture of the plastic hull, which they went through to after the wooden hulls,
Okay.
and it does have the wooden superstructure on it, and
It's
it
a
has
small cruiser.
small
Got a
cruiser,
little
small cabin cruiser, yeah. And it does have the rails on it that are metal. It's in overall good condition. It does need a cleaning, which I haven't gotten to.
Yeah.
I probably would not restore it, but it comes in this particular boat box that I've seen in other series, and I think what has happened is manufacturer has made the boat and sold it to different marketing organizations, and they put it in their own box.
I see, yeah.
So it's hard to know exactly the history. There's no real books on the subject.
Right. Well, we've got an interesting boat right here.
This one we know a lot about.
We do. Okay.
This one we're back to the old Fleet Line company.
Line Ranger. It's a.
This is the Ranger. This is one of their first cabin cruisers. This is their standard design box. It is made just for the Ranger, but the theme of the box is the same on all of their boats.
Okay.
This is sold in a package. The engine is a Hurricane engine.
Hurricane.
Which is also made by Fleet Line. And they're the folks that came over and moved the factory from Japan over to Van Nuys, California.
Right.
This one has the plunger on and off switch. There are no running lights that are hooked up to the battery, but it's a basic small cabin cruiser outboard. And the fact that this material is probably 40 to 50 years old and it's still in honestly great shape says it probably wasn't played with very much.
It's amazing. So it's got the white hull and it's got the mahogany decks.
Mahogany
That's kind of a
decks.
nice touch.
Yep.
Yep. And Hurricane engine has got to be powerful, right?
Yes, definitely.
We've got that one, and then we've got one last boat in this series. This looks like it's got twins on it.
This is made by a company called Landcraft.
Landcraft.
They made the cabin cruiser. This one is an all-wood cabin cruiser, and they have their engines on the back, the twin Landcrafts.
Yeah.
They have the on and off switch in the handle. We can turn that. And this has a bow light that does work.
Oh.
And it has a horn, a light, rails. This windshield does not drop down. It's a stationary windshield.
Yeah.
But this is unusual because it has the fishing poles on it. It has the holders so you can go out deep sea fishing on it with the boat. And it is, say, a cabin cruiser, and it's got a lever gear shift for the on and off switch.
Yeah. Now, you know, again, just from an overview perspective, you've been around the collecting field for quite some time, and I'm sure you're a very skilled collector. Do you find you collect boats that sometimes are in need of restoration, and do you find that there's avenues for getting that done?
Yes, not me. I'm not a restorer. I can clean boats, and my fingers just don't work the way some people's do.
Yes.
And I find the best restorers are former engineers. They are so detailed and they are so meticulous in everything they do.
Yeah.
And again, I've looked into meeting up with two of them, one in Arkansas and one in Texas, who are both engineers, and they really do tremendous work on restoring. But I don't think every boat needs to be restored. There's certain ones. This boat looks in great shape that I probably would not have it restored.
Right, right. It's a judgment call.
It's a judgment call.
Yeah.
And it's an issue with price too, because they're not cheap to have them restored.
Okay.
Some people say it hurts the value. Other people say it helps the value. It's an interesting question. I like some boats just as they are.
Yeah, me too. Well, Fred, you know, it's hard to believe, but we've taken up a whole half hour of a TV show with all this review of the boats. It's been a really interesting show. You know, there's such a variety of model boats and different shapes and sizes and all that. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close out the show today?
Well, I'm hoping that this show will touch a lot of people who haven't seen model boats and don't have any knowledge of that they existed, and that they will go possibly onto eBay, make a purchase of a boat that needs some work, see if they're any good at restoring them, and try it. You can pick them up for $20, $30 plus shipping, or you can pay $50 or $60 and see if it works. And if you don't like it, sell it back on eBay.
Right.
It's an easy way to get started and see how much fun it is.
Yeah, I'm sure they could have a lot of fun. Well, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for coming and taking all the time and the pictures, and I think it's going to be a great concept.
Good, thank you. And thank you, Smart Boating viewers, for watching. If you have questions or comments, visit us on our website, www.smartboatingus.com. Thank you.